What is up, guys? Rob here for a special podcast. Just wanted to hop on here real quick because of the insane breaking news that we just got yesterday. Ronda Rousey is returning to mixed martial arts. She's fighting Gina Carano outside of the UFC, which is a very big point that I want to make in this video. But just insane news. I know a lot of people, like, there's some mixed feelings about it, but that's kind of why I wanted to wait a day to kind of like let the news cycle shake out a little bit, see what some people thought, and like kind of, even for myself, I was so shocked when this news got dropped yesterday in the middle of my workday. And like I wanted to let it kind of set in before I made a video about it, and because I didn't want to, there's a lot of people who put out immediate reactions, and, you know, that's all well and good, and I get that. But at the same time, I kind of wanted to let it sit for a little bit in my own mind and in just the MMA space in general. And I kind of just wanted to see how I felt about it a day removed from the news that we got. And, you know, I'm recording this around 4:30 Eastern time, the day after the news broke. And, like, I'm still just in total awe. And we've been making the point on the channel for such a long time now that outside of the UFC and mixed martial arts, there's really not much around anymore. Like, the PFL exists, sure, but they have no real respect. One championship is kind of irrelevant at this point in America. So, like, this is the first non-UFC MMA event that I could think of in a pretty long time that I'm actually super excited for. And, like, the fight itself, May 16th on Netflix, MVP Promotions, you know, Jake Paul's promotion. Obviously, they've only been in boxing so far. This will be their first MMA event. I don't know if there'll be more after this, but, you know, we'll see about that. I think that'll probably depend on how successful this one is. But even just the fight itself, to start off with that, Ronda Rousey versus Gina Carano. I mean, this was the fight that got away for women's MMA. Like, when you think of fights that everybody wanted to see and just never materialized, like, the one that always comes to mind is Khabib versus Tony. For women's MMA, I think it's Rousey versus Carano. You know, we were very close to getting this fight a lot of other times, specifically in like around 2014, 2015. And Dana White sent an interesting text to Gina Carano, called her a name, and that kind of fizzled out the negotiations for that fight in the UFC back in 2014. But now, you know, we have it. It's outside of the UFC banner, which like I said, that might be my favorite part about it. And that's kind of like the hidden storyline in all this, because everybody's like, Ronda Rousey's coming back, and like I'm with everybody else who's hyped for that. It's like one of the biggest stars in MMA history is returning. And honestly, like, I gotta say this too, there's so many people who are hating on this, and I get not liking Ronda Rousey, that's fine, but to act like this isn't a big deal is just insane to me. Like, and I get it. Ronda Rousey's 39. Gina Carano is in her mid-40s. But no one's billing this as, like, the best versus the best. This is just a dream fight. It's a super fight. It's a fight that we've wanted for over a decade at this point. And now we're actually getting it. And, like, you know, I just have so much excitement because Ronda Rousey's returning. You know, she hasn't fought in a decade, and you have to wonder, like, what is that layoff going to do to her? She's complained a lot since she's retired about, like, concussion symptoms, you know, just nagging effects from the couple of times that she got knocked out in MMA. You have to wonder if that's going to still affect her, especially against Gina Carano, who's the bigger fighter. She hits pretty hard, and, you know, I don't know what to expect from Gina Carano because she hasn't competed since 2009, and, like, I want to say I favor Ronda Rousey, but you really just don't know because it's been so long since they've competed, and, like, that's what makes me intrigued for this fight. And some people, it turns them off. That's fine. But for me, like, I'm so curious to see what happens in this matchup because you have two legends, two pioneers of women's MMA, and, like, stylistically, Rousey versus Carano is such a good fight because Ronda is still as good as she is on the ground. And if she can get Gina down early, I mean, I think she can get a submission. But the thing is, Gina's so much bigger. You have to wonder if Gina is going to be able to defend those takedowns. And, like, I don't know. Like, I'm just thinking about it. Like, I'm really thinking out loud when it comes to that part of it. Like, that's what intrigues me about the matchup because I truly don't know who's going to win that fight. And it's between two legends. And I'm say what you will about their ages and about, like Ronda's relationship with the MMA community, but this is a big fight. And honestly, I'll say this, and this can kind of pivot the conversation into MVP, which is what I kind of want to talk about here. But like, let's say the UFC doesn't get Conor McGregor on the White House card, and maybe they don't get Ilia Topuria versus Justin Gaethje. You could argue that this fight between Ronda Rousey and Gina Carano might be the most watched MMA fight in 2026. I'm not saying it's the best versus the best, but I'm saying when you factor in how big of a star Ronda Rousey is, and like it's on Netflix, it's going to be accessible to so many people. I truly think that this is going to get a lot of eyeballs on it, and that's why I'm so curious to see what the future holds for MVP when it comes to them promoting MMA, because they've already done a pretty decent job in boxing. You could say what you want about them being kind of like a circus for some events, which I would agree with, but for mixed martial arts, like right now outside of the UFC, there's just nothing when it comes to that. Like we've talked about this a lot. Right now outside of the UFC, it's the alternate rule set promotions that are doing pretty well, like BKFC, Karate Combat, Dirty Boxing. Jorge Masvidal's promotion actually just announced a pretty big tournament. And my logic behind that was because like you're not really comparing those fighters to the best fighters in the UFC because it's not the same thing. But because of that, the UFC owns the MMA space and there's just no competition. So for me, it's like if this event is successful for MVP, I want to see more because Rousey versus Carano is a big fight. I don't care how old they are. In 2026, it's still a big fight. It's a fight that got away from us a long time ago, and now we're getting it. It's a true super fight. It's a true dream fight, and you really can't predict it. Like, who knows what this fight's going to look like? I don't know if it'll be like the top level of women's mixed martial arts in 2026, but it's exciting at the very least. I'm very intrigued to see who wins this. But I want to see if this unlocks a new competitor for the UFC. And like we have no word on whether this is going to extend past this event, but you have to imagine if Rousey versus Carano is successful, MVP will continue to have MMA fights. And people aren't even talking about like the possible undercard for this fight because Rousey versus Carano is a super fight as it is, even at their ages. But like there's still a lot of big name fighters who aren't signed to the UFC right now. Like we could see Chris Weidman on this card. We could see Tyron Woodley on this card. We could see even Nate Diaz on this card. It's amazing. Like I can't tell you guys how excited I am for something outside of the UFC in mixed martial arts in 2026. Like, because I really didn't have much hope. And this really came out of nowhere. Like I said, I was at work yesterday when the news got dropped, and it was so unexpected. And I never thought, like, because, we started this channel in, like, 2022. I never thought that we'd be covering a Ronda Rousey fight. I really did not imagine that. And I definitely never thought we'd be covering a Gina Carano fight. So it's something. It's a spectacle. Yes, it's not the best of the best. But it's still a high-level matchup. It's between two legends. And, like, I don't know. Like, don't get me wrong. I see the points that the detractors are making. And I agree with them. I get it. Ronda Rousey's almost 40. Gina Carano's in her mid-40s. It's not them at their best. But it's also not them at their, like, absolute oldest. Like, when we watched Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz have their third fight, that was way too far in the future for them after those first two fights. So like with Ronda Rousey and Gina Carano still being at an age where they can train in a healthy way, I want to see it. And like, I will say this, I do hope for Ronda's sake that it doesn't go too badly for her in terms of head trauma, because like I said, she's talked a lot about the concussions that she's had and like the lingering effects of them. But as long as this fight kind of, it's really a win-win either way. Like, because if Ronda Rousey wins, I mean, you have to wonder if she's going to fight again and like what's next for her. Could she go back to the UFC? Will she try and build something with MVP if they decide to keep building their MMA brand? And then if Gina Carano wins, I don't think that the future in MMA is as strong for her, but she could springboard this into, getting back into the Hollywood game because, she was pretty famous when she was acting. She was in The Mandalorian, really good in that. And this is just a massive opportunity for both of them. I never, like I said, I never thought that we'd be covering a fight like this in 2026. And despite what everybody or what all the haters are saying, I'm pretty excited for this one because it's a big star, and I'm just amped. Like I said, the UFC has had such a stranglehold over MMA for such a long time, and it's about time we have another promotion that's putting on an event that could arguably be the biggest fight of the year. Maybe not to the hardcore fans, but to just everybody, hardcore casuals, like just speaking on eyeballs alone. Rousey versus Carano could possibly be the most watched fight in 2026. And I do think that depends on what the UFC has in store for the White House card. If they do have Conor McGregor, I think that'll probably, I think it will supersede it. But if it's any other fight, I don't know, because Ronda Rousey's such a big name, Netflix is such a big platform, and MVP knows how to promote their fights. And that's more than you could say about a lot of the other promotions outside of the UFC. So I'm very intrigued to hear more about this event. Like I said, May 16th. There's a press conference in early March, and I'm just so curious to see what comes of this event. But I just kind of wanted to give you guys my quick thoughts, because I do think that there's a bigger story here if MVP can start to compete with the UFC. If this event is a success and they want to keep going in MMA, it's a big deal. Because like I said, the UFC has a monopoly right now over MMA, whether people want to admit that or not. The PFL is a dying brand. One championship just isn't big in the United States at this point. So if Rousey versus Carano is a success and MVP wants to continue in the MMA business, we could see somebody competing with the UFC. But all that being said, it depends on how this event goes, and especially the main event. And you just have to wonder that. Like I said, it's an intriguing matchup, even at their ages. So that's my thoughts on this matchup and just everything that goes along with it. Very curious to see what you guys think, because I feel like I've seen honestly, I've seen three different types of reactions. There's either people who love it, there's people who are kind of indifferent to it, and then there's people who just hate it and aren't interested at all. But I do think the general population is pretty intrigued by this, especially the casual fan base who, I think they're a market that could be tapped, because the UFC, I mean, they have a stranglehold on MMA, but if there can be some big fights outside of the UFC banner, I do see some potential there, especially with the UFC kind of being stale some weeks out of the year. And honestly, I want to see how this event goes. I'll have a more set opinion after I see this event, but it has me very excited for the future. A lot more excited for the future of MMA than I was in the beginning of 2026. That's for sure. So curious what you guys think. Let me know in the comments. Hope you guys enjoyed this quick little, I guess, recap of all the news that just broke and everything that's coming with it. But yeah, let me know what you guys think, and we'll be covering the UFC Houston card, and that podcast recapping that will probably come out on Sunday or Monday. So until then, thanks guys for watching, and we'll see y'all. Easy gas.